Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is the place where we take the sources you send us, all the research and the complex notes, and we just plunge right in.
Yeah.
The goal, as always, is to cut through the noise, to find those really crucial, surprising nuggets of information, and basically hand you the keys to a topic that could take you weeks to really get your head around.
And today we are navigating a truly terrifying space. We're diving deep into a narrative that mixes Gothic horror, body horror, and some really profound psychological analysis.
Hmm.
It's the story of Evander, a young man held captive in this ancient, crumbling manor called Hazelthorn. Our sources detail a life of, enforced isolation, a chronic illness that's been completely manufactured, and a central mystery that involves a murderous, almost magical garden.
That's right. And this isn't just a simple ghost story or haunted house thing. It's a story about the systematic abuse of identity. Evander's entire life, every single detail about his past, his health, his confinement, it was all engineered for a really sinister purpose. And the whole thing, this fragile world he lives in, it's just shattered by two immediate seismic events.
The first is almost simple. It's the click of a lock that suddenly gives him a freedom he never expected, never even thought was possible.
And the second?
The second is the grotesque, immediate death of his guardian, Laurie Lennox Hall, a death that is, unmistakably tied to the manor's botanical horrifying secrets.
That breaking point is what forces Evander out of this routine that was designed to keep him weak and quiet.
Right.
And it throws him right into a desperate, frantic investigation. So our mission today is to really analyze the layers here, the medical abuse, the engineered family conflict, and the horrifying truth about the garden and Evander's own biological identity.
We really need to unpack why he feels perpetually buried alive, the shocking revelation that his entire past was a fabrication, and how embracing his own monstrous truth becomes really his only path to survival.
It's a deep dive into self-acceptance found through a really radical, almost aggressive transformation.
Yeah, it is. Let's get started.
Okay, so let's unpack this whole concept of engineered confinement and internalized shame. Evander's world literally begins and ends in the silent, suffocating north wing of Hazelthorn.
And the reason he tells himself he's locked in is just tragic. He believes the lock is for his own safety. He thinks, I'm newly ill and orphaned and traumatized. He accepts the story.
He accepts the narrative that he is inherently unstable or even dangerous.
And that acceptance is really the insidious root of the horror here. The confinement isn't just about keeping him physically isolated, right?
Yeah.
It's about making him believe he deserves it, that he's fundamentally defective. The sources keep using this imagery of him being buried alive.
Yeah, the quiet of the north wing fitted around him like a well-tailored grave.
Yeah.
That line is so chilling.
It is. It goes so far beyond just feeling trapped. It's this internalized belief that he is like waste, rot, something that should be hidden away from the world.
And the most visceral evidence of this, of the original trauma he can't even articulate, is the taste.
The dirt.
Years later, he still feels like he has dirt in his mouth. And that's not just a metaphor for a bad memory, It's a physical symptom, a constant reminder of the horror that the Lennox Halls tried to erase or gaslight him out of. He literally carries the flavor of the garden's earth with him.
And that internal chaos, that denial of his own reality, it leads to these really profound physical manifestations of his trauma. His memories are fragmented. His anxiety is constant.
Right.
We see him using self-harm not as an escape, but as this desperate way to ground himself. He gives himself blood blisters, and the source mentions his fourth welt of the evening. He's seeking a shock of pain for proof of life.
That phrase, proof of life, is so important here. When your reality is constantly being questioned, when your guardians and doctors are systematically lying to you, your own body becomes the only thing you can actually trust.
Exactly.
Self-harm, in this context, it almost functions as a protest against the gaslighting. It's Evander's way of saying, I may not know who my parents were or why I'm so sick, but I know this pain is real, therefore I am real.
His physical body is the last frontier of his truth. It has to be.
And this desperation for autonomy, it connects directly to how the author intentionally frames the whole story. The notes describe this as a story of queer and autistic rage and denied autonomy. Evander's life is shaped by this expectation that he has to be fragile, compliant, contained, the delicate falling apart damsel. His rage is the only natural response to a world that refuses to let him be whole or unconventional or independent.
He's fundamentally rejecting the role that the Lennox Halls forced on him.
It's a rage that just simmers under the surface, even in his most complicated relationships. And this engineered confinement, it provides the perfect context for his profoundly toxic dynamic with Laurie.
That relationship is a fascinating study in trauma bonding and just cognitive dissonance. Evander whispers Laurie's name to the garden and then explicitly says, "I hate him."
And he has a reason, or he thinks he does. This hatred is fueled by this unbearable daily obsession with the boy who tried to kill him in the garden 7 years ago. Laurie is the source of his foundational remembered pain.
Yet despite that declared hatred, the source material makes it crystal clear that Evander is profoundly dependent on him.
Oh, completely. He craves snippets of his voice. He watches for Laurie from the windows of the north wing. The obsession is so potent it burns his tongue.
It's the kind of emotional complexity that only shared, misunderstood trauma can really create. He is, in a way, addicted to the boy who represents both his greatest secret and his last connection to any kind of shared childhood.
Exactly. Laurie is a fixed point in this world of lies. Even if that fixed point is, malicious, it's reliable.
Right. Evander is terrified of Laurie, but he's even more terrified of being truly alone in the vacuum of Hazelthorn. It's this cycle of approach and avoidance, fueled by years of forced proximity and this shared, silent suffering.
And that volatile, strange connection is what gets immediately tested when Evander's prison breaks open. He finds Laurie, who is just completely casual, unbothered, sprawled on a chaise.
But the real catalyst, the thing that changes everything, is the confrontation in the conservatory with Byron Lennox Hall, a room that is pointedly, overwhelmingly full of plants. The stage is literally set for botanical horror.
The conservatory is so critical. It's where Byron, the ultimate gardener and enforcer of the estate, is surrounded by his work. He's found with pruners in hand, surrounded by beheaded roses.
It signifies his control, his violence against nature, even as nature is about to turn violently against him.
And this is where the narrative just shifts. It goes from psychological confinement to this visceral physical horror. Byron suffers a sudden violent spasm.
And the specificity of the death is what really lingers. Black mucus froths from his mouth, and Evander sees something that shifts, pushes, settles right beneath Byron's larynx.
The distinct outline of leaves growing in his throat.
It's not a subtle poisoning, not something you could easily cover up. It's an act of botanical consumption from the inside out. The estate, or something within it, is rejecting Byron, consuming the controller.
It's this immediate, grotesque confirmation that the manor is fundamentally alive and malicious.
And amid this horrifying spectacle, Byron manages one final panicked act. He seizes Evander's wrist so tightly the bones crunch and delivers this desperate warning.
Do not go into the garden. Swear to me, Evander.
That final painful command, this new rule delivered by a dying abuser, becomes Evander's first terrifying mystery to solve. Why the sudden desperate warning? Is it to protect Evander, or is it to protect the garden's secret?
And before Evander can even begin to process any of it, Laurie bursts in,
yelling, "What the hell did you do?"
Right, as Evander is attempting chest compressions. So instantly, Evander, the sickly, traumatized ward, becomes the primary suspect. He's rushed back to his room, locked in again, and the key turns with that familiar, sickening, dull thud, making his world tip right back into enforced, isolated paralysis.
And that return to confinement, even just for a moment, it's the author emphasizing the cycle of abuse. The family's default reaction to a crisis isn't compassion.
No, it's containment.
It's containment and control. They immediately revert to the established pattern. Evander must be locked away.
So the 3 days that follow Byron's death, while Evander is locked away again, are just pure psychological pressure.
He's starving, he's panicking, he's experiencing severe anxiety, the sour stench of untouched milk and medication, the very poisons he was forced to take for years, is this constant silent threat in the room with him.
And this extreme isolation, combined with the chaos and trauma of what he just witnessed, it forces Evander into a survival mechanism, intellectualization.
Right. He's pacing constantly, biting his nails down to the quick, even biting his wrist. It's the physical manifestation of his trauma just spilling out. But his mind latches onto the Sherlock Holmes classics approach.
He's seeking control through logic. He can't control his confinement, he can't control the chaos outside his door, and he certainly can't control his own body, which has been systematically poisoned and, as we learn, harvested.
But he can solve the murder. He needs facts to compartmentalize the fear, the grief, and the profound hunger he is feeling.
And his initial investigation is a model of logic, however desperate it is. He narrows the potential killer down to the four in Hazelthorn.
Carrington, the butler, Laurie himself, because he has blackouts and can't recall everything. Or, some mysterious outsider who unlocked his door,
Let's start with the external suspects. Carrington served the tea.
making him the obvious conduit for the poison.
Evander initially dismisses him because he supposedly had zero motive and spoke of Byron with adoration. Carrington was supposedly rushed to the hospital in shock. But even Evander, in his panic, he senses the flaw in that alibi. He questions later whether Carrington ever really went to the hospital.
Then there's Laurie. Laurie has the strongest motive by far. Byron was demonstrably cruel. Laurie even muttered, "Long may he rot," a detail Evander catches.
And of course, there's the big one, the underlying remembered trauma that Laurie had tried to kill him before. Plus, Laurie seems oddly unconcerned with Byron's death.
Right, which reads as either deep psychological detachment or, successful deception. He's hiding something.
But the investigation is immediately complicated by this external interference. The attorney, Benedict Dawes, he officially reports Byron's death as a cerebral aneurysm.
A natural death.
A natural death.
And that official lie is the immediate external gaslighting Evander faces. It forces him to rely entirely on his own terrifying memory of the leaves in Byron's throat. He knows the aneurysm story is a fabrication.
And it provides cover for the true killer. It stops any police investigation before it can start. It seals the case prematurely, meaning Evander has to become the sole, disparate detective.
That pressure pushes him past Byron's dying oath. He has to. He flees his room. And this leads to that deeply visceral scene in the greenhouse.
He's driven by this ravenous desperation to eat. He's starving, and in this moment of just profound degradation and feral need, he actually shoves compost into his mouth. Dirt and hunger all mixed together.
That feral action, however repulsive, is what leads to his first solid clue. It connects his internal reality, that taste of dirt, to the physical reality of the estate. While he's rooting around in these potting mix sacks, he unearths a hidden object.
A fat green journal bound with rawhide, titled Hazelthorn Field Guide.
This guide is the key. It unlocks the logic behind the botanical horror. It's not standard botany at all. It's an encyclopedia of monstrosity. It's filled with watercolor illustrations of bizarre, twisted, and highly toxic plants.
Plants with names like wolflock and deadly nightshades.
And we really need to slow down here and analyze what this guide represents. It's the family's secret industry. It's a scientific roadmap to the ancient dark knowledge of Hazelthorn. The descriptions of the poisons match the symptoms Evander witnessed perfectly.
Berries and shades of indigo and vermilion that cause choking, disordered speech, and stroke-like convulsions.
And crucially, this ties back to Evander's fragmented memory. He remembers tasting poisonous berries during the original attack 7 years ago.
So the guide confirms two things for him. One, Byron was poisoned, not struck by an aneurysm. And two, the poison came directly from the plants on the estate. The source of the murder is the very garden Byron forbade him from entering.
This discovery fundamentally changes Evander's detective work. It shifts his focus from who served the poison to what the garden is and how it operates.
Right, he's no longer just investigating a family squabble. He's investigating an ancient, murderous biological entity.
And as he investigates, the red flags around Laurie just keep multiplying. Laurie is relentless in his mockery, calling Evander feral. Cat. The cruelty is constant.
When Evander asks why the garden is so overgrown and why Byron forbade entry, Laurie gives these evasive, condescending answers. Tells him to perform a seance.
The mockery and the evasiveness are just classic deflection techniques. You can tell they're rooted in deep trauma. Laurie is desperate to keep Evander from the truth.
Potentially because the truth implicates him, or because he fears the knowledge will endanger Evander even more. We don't know at this point.
But Evander, the keen observer, is processing all of this. He notices Laurie has a tell.
Yeah, that he works overtime to keep his face still when he lies. This is Evander turning his deep, unsettling obsession with Laurie into a powerful analytical tool. His mind, honed by years of watching people while he was confined, is exceptionally good at spotting these little discrepancies in social performance.
It connects back perfectly to that theme of autistic rage and denied autonomy. Evander doesn't have the social ease or conformity expected of him, but he possesses this intense, necessary focus on pattern recognition and truth-seeking.
He uses his intellect to try and pierce Laurie's defenses, knowing that the boy he's obsessed with is withholding crucial information about the murder and this stolen inheritance. He's trying to categorize Laurie objectively as a potential killer, even though his heart is just completely tangled up in it.
It's a detective mission fueled by a broken heart and a terrifying truth about his own body. He can't reconcile his love, his obsession, with the growing evidence of Laurie's deceit.
And Evander's detective work gets stalled by the inevitable next step, the will reading.
Right. This is where the Lennox Hall family, the systemic rot that has contained him, is fully introduced. And it's where the motives shift from personal malice to this really cold, institutionalized greed.
The revelation is immediate and so destabilizing. Evander is the sole heir. He inherits the estate and billions.
Which simultaneously places the largest target possible on his back and completely cuts Laurie out of the inheritance.
Right, which confirms Laurie's immense financial motive for wanting Evander discredited or dead.
But the real chilling detail is the stipulation attached to the will. It dictates that if Evander is unable to inherit, for any reason, being mentally unfit, dying, whatever, the entire estate will be razed, demolished completely, and the funds donated to charity.
That stipulation is just a brilliant piece of structural terror. It means that the entire family, all these vultures descending on the manor, are motivated by two conflicting goals.
They either have to control Evander until he inherits, or
they ensure his destruction so the estate can be razed, satisfying some ancient family grudge or making sure the secrets die with Byron. This makes Evander a target for both control and destruction.
And right on cue, the vultures descend. The will names Oleander Burnett, Byron's estranged sister, as Evander's new guardian. Her very presence changes the atmosphere of Hazelthorn instantly.
Laurie Lennox Hall, the great aunt. The source material paints a picture of aggressive, loud, and judgmental control. She dresses in color like an eruption.
A great line. It symbolizes the chaos and malice she's bringing with her.
She instantly takes the reins, demanding all the keys, snapping orders at her assistant, Jessica. She sees Evander not as a ward, but as a small, inconvenient asset to be tidied and managed. Evander immediately adds her to his suspect wall. She wants control of the estate, and she'd been locked out for decades by Byron.
And we have to analyze the specific form of greed each of these vultures embodies. Oleander represents that aggressive, controlling ambition. She couldn't care less about Evander. She cares about the power and status the guardianship gives her.
Then there is Bain Burnett, who insists on being a Lennox Hall again. He oozes new money. He's described as too much, lacking the genuine ancient decay of Hazelthorn.
And Evander notices odd scratches on his arm.
A critical detail. It suggests Bain has been fighting through hedgerows, confirming he had secret, unauthorized access to Hazelthorn before the will reading. Bain represents this sort of pathetic desperation. He clings to the name and the wealth, suggesting he's doing Oleander's dirty work.
Finally, we have Azalea Adeline Lennox Hall. She is elegant, clinical, and maybe the most frightening because her detachment is so total. She's obsessed with Evander's gorgeous looks, seeing him as a beautiful, expensive object.
And she casually proposes an arrangement, adoption or marriage, anything that would let her manage his fortune while she travels luxuriously.
Azalea embodies this clinical detachment and consumption. While she claims an alibi, the Maldives, her entire focus is on money and on Evander's body as a commodity. Her specific form of evil is that polite, socialized threat that you might overlook in favor of Bain's clumsiness or Oleander's aggression.
They're all distinct evils, but together they highlight the complete systemic rot of the Lennox Hall line.
And it is Azalea, in her casual, clinical manner, who drops the absolute gruesome family secret during breakfast. She reveals the fundamental, horrifying purpose of the estate.
If we feed it a reasonable amount of blood, it gives us rubies.
Rubies. That one single detail reframes the entire story. The garden isn't a botanical wonder or a supernatural threat. It is a resource, a dark, alchemical machine for generating wealth through violence. It literally turns suffering and life into tangible profit.
The revelation confirms the generational, institutionalized evil of the family. And Azalea explains Byron's recent behavior, why he was so agitated he was no longer feeding it.
He was using starvation to try and force the garden to behave because it was taking so much and giving back so little. Byron was trying to renegotiate his terms with the monster, which, likely led to his death.
And if that wasn't enough systemic destruction for one morning, Azalea then proceeds to shatter Evander's entire personal foundation. She reveals the long-held story of the tragic car crash, where Evander's parents and Laurie's father, Locke, all supposedly died together, is a total fabrication.
Locke drove out alone and died.
The immediate psychological impact of this lie is just profound. Evander has spent years clinging to a narrative of shared loss and tragedy to justify his own existence. To discover his whole life story was manufactured is devastating.
And the physical evidence of this deception is the most painful part. The treasured photograph of his supposed parents was just a stock image cut from a magazine.
He has no last name, no past, no identity outside of the one the Lennox Halls fabricated to control him. This is the moment that concept of manufactured identity becomes acutely, painfully real for him. He's given a lie to make his imprisonment palatable, and the emotional vacuum that leaves fuels his need for the truth.
This massive psychological blow forces Evander to accelerate his investigation. He recognizes that the threats are now active and immediate.
And Laurie confirms the first major lie told by the attorney. Dawes lied. Carrington was never admitted to the hospital.
So Carrington is a missing suspect, a wild card.
And the escalation reaches this terrifying peak when Evander discovers the truth about Carrington. He's no longer just missing, he is a decomposing, shambling monster, caked in compost, moving like a suit of decaying meat.
And he's trying to dose Evander with poison.
This is such a crucial warning sign. The garden doesn't just produce rubies, it produces controlled, reanimated servants. Carrington is a zombie, a failed or successful experiment of the garden's power, bound to continue the cycle of administering poison, even in his decayed state.
Evander runs, terrified, plunging into this nightmare where he's sprinting through the hall, screaming Laurie's name, desperate for rescue.
Only to realize he's back in the garden. And there he hears the low scrape of the shovel, scraping soil, the memory of his original attack resurfacing. The distinction between the manor, his trauma, and the living horror outside has completely collapsed.
We've arrived at the point of no return. Evander now fully understands that the garden is a system of violence, and the Lennox Hall family members are merely its active agents.
This understanding is cemented when he witnesses an act of horrifying, casual evil. Bane brutally murders Jessica, Oleander's assistant, near the red door.
He commits the act near the sacrifice bed, treating Jessica's throat like chewy and soft flesh. The lack of remorse, the sheer casualness of using a human life to feed the garden, confirms that murder is institutionalized for them. This isn't a crime of passion, it's an act of farming.
And Laurie, watching this unfold, is terrified. His composure finally breaks. And this leads to that critical moment of mutual disclosure.
He confesses he ran out of time to stop Bane, but more importantly, he reveals the truth of his own trauma inflicted by Byron.
This is so essential for reframing Laurie's character. He admits Byron would tie him to a chair and force him to choke on mud, teaching him to stay quiet.
And Laurie's broken wrist, the brace he wears, it was Byron's punishment for trying to tell the truth about Evander in the garden a second time.
This transforms Laurie's cruelty and aloofness from simple malice into a desperate defense mechanism. He was forced into silence and compliance through physical and psychological torment. His constant mocking was a reflection of the abuse he endured. It was a way to distance himself from Evander, who he couldn't protect.
However, that revelation doesn't grant instant forgiveness or peace. Evander, overwhelmed by decades of lies and fury, that internalized queer and autistic rage that has been simmering, he physically attacks Laurie.
Slams him against the wall, and in this shocking feral display, licks the blood.
It's a moment of necessary, grotesque self-realization. Evander embraces the monstrous, he tastes the blood, and he realizes this feral hunger, this intense, violent rage, is not an episode of illness.
It's a genuine, powerful part of him.
He is not the fragile, contained ward. He is something dangerous and wild. This self-acceptance of his own monstrosity is terrifying, but it's necessary for his survival.
And the threats are converging. Dawes, the attorney, is revealed as a second killer and the ultimate intellectual manipulator.
He murdered the previous attorney, Godfrey, and created the aneurysm cover story to buy time to study Byron's paperwork. And his goal was to steal a clipping from Evander's body to propagate a second Hazelthorn garden.
Dawes recognized that Evander was the source of power, the living human host of the estate. He wasn't interested in the rubies or the money.
No, he wanted the technology of the monstrosity itself.
And this scheme leads directly to the most horrifying act of medical abuse in the entire narrative.
Evander is violently dosed by Oleander and Bane, leading to this unwanted emergency surgery. He wakes up bandaged, his hair cut, his body ravaged. This final act of violation reveals the ultimate truth of the Lennox Hall care.
Byron had been cutting out Evander's ribs for years, not for medical treatment, but to experiment with propagation.
They weren't treating an illness, they were harvesting him. They were cultivating soft greenwood and botanical tissue from his own body to try and start other gardens. Evander realizes he was never a ward, he was a controlled resource. A human greenhouse.
And the final defining piece of body horror is Evander's response to the surgery. He uses his own fingers to dig into the healing chest incision.
The stitches snap, and inside he finds soft green wood and tiny mauve flowers, fairy foxglove growing. He pulls out a piece of his own broken rib, recognizing the soft green wood that has been harvested from him for years.
He is physically, biologically inseparable from the garden. This is the ultimate affirmation of his identity crisis, and it sets the stage for Laurie's true, final confession about the sacrifice 7 years prior.
Laurie appears and gives the revelation that just flips the entire narrative on its head. He didn't try to sacrifice Evander to kill him. He says, "I asked the garden for you, then I dug you up."
Evander's former self was the sacrifice, used to turn Evander into the living botanical entity, Hazelthorn.
This reframes Laurie's actions entirely. His original act wasn't malice, it was this desperate, misunderstood, and profoundly dangerous act of creation. He sacrificed his friend to the garden, wishing for a companion, an equal, and he dug up the monster Evander became.
And Laurie explains the traumatic episodes Evander suffered. The blackouts, the bruising, the wild plant growth in his room, the taste of dirt.
"You are the garden," Laurie explains. Those episodes were moments when when Hazelthorn took over, manifesting his true nature, fighting back. And the reason for the violence, the garden just really fucking hates Lennox Halls.
Evander's violence and rage were simply his true self manifesting against his systematic abusers. The shame and fear he felt about his own rage were unwarranted. His rage was biological, and it was justified.
That transition from Evander, the sickly, contained boy, to Hazelthorn, the embodiment of justified biological rage. That is the crux of the transformation narrative. He's no longer running from his truth. He is literally warring it.
So with the truth of his identity fully integrated, Evander, who is now Hazelthorn, is immune to the very toxins that kept him sick and controlled for years. He now possesses the ultimate weapon against his abusers.
The malice of the garden itself.
The Lennox Halls, completely oblivious, are holding their wake dinner. Hazelthorn, perfectly positioned, executes his vengeance. He purposefully poisons the plum wine with heart rot, a plant that grows from his own severed wrist and stump.
This plant, resembling a grotesque anatomical heart, is the physical manifestation of his identity as a weapon.
This act is a total reclamation of autonomy. For years, he was forced to ingest medicine poison. Now he weaponizes his own body and the garden's malice to administer the final, deadly dose. It's a symbolic reversal of the systematic medical abuse he endured.
And he delivers the final, chilling toast to his unsuspecting family.
Thank you for coming to eat, and be eaten. Long may you rot.
The guests succumb, choking, hemorrhaging, suffering the same botanical consumption that killed Byron.
It's a poetic, gruesome end for a family built on blood sacrifices. And the sources mention this complexity about Byron's death. While Hazelthorn thinks he might have killed Byron, he later realizes he was merely immune to the toxins that had already been administered.
This detail confirms that Evander was not the original killer of Byron.
Laurie was. Which leads us to the final, intense confrontation. Hazelthorn finds Laurie, who had been caught and injured by Oleander after trying to save Evander. Laurie is weak, fading, and now totally vulnerable in the garden.
And just as Hazelthorn is processing this, Dawes, the ultimate manipulator, returns. He attempts to get his fresh clipping, a hand from Hazelthorn, to ensure his new second garden will thrive. Dawes' clinical pursuit of Evander as a resource ends here.
Hazelthorn, embracing the full power of the garden's rage and his new identity, unleashes the earth itself. A plum tree root, seemingly sentient and directed by Hazelthorn's will, plunges through Dawes' chest, ending him instantly.
It's the ultimate revenge delivered by the earth, protecting its host.
What follows the violence is equally important, though, the healing.
Yes. The garden, acting through Hazelthorn, uses its power not just for destruction, but for restoration. He heals Laurie's wounds with witch hazel and comfrey leaves, reversing the damage inflicted by Oleander.
And this act of restorative power solidifies Laurie's final confession of loyalty. He admits he unlocked Evander's door and poisoned Byron's tea. He confirms it wasn't an act of malice, but an act of desperation.
He was trying to distract the family from doing something worse to Evander, trying to create chaos as a protective measure.
This recontextualizes their entire 7-year relationship. Laurie's hate was a facade. His actions, the original sacrifice, the ultimate poisoning, they were all rooted in a deep, desperate desire to protect Evander from the systemic violence of the Lennox Hall system.
He tried to save Evander first by creating a monster that could survive, and then by removing the ultimate threat.
But the journey isn't over. Hazelthorn is horrified by his own power and his own hunger. He demands Laurie leave and lock him in the garden forever, a return to confinement, but now on his own terms. He wants to protect the world and Laurie from his monstrous self.
This is the ultimate test of their bond. Evander seeks confinement again, believing he's too dangerous for the world, but Laurie refuses that final act of self-confinement.
He throws the key into the ivy.
And tackles Hazelthorn, embracing him despite the toxicity and the thorns.
And the final scene, it establishes their new reality. They are alone in the garden. Laurie pledges to stay, sharing his room with a tree with Hazelthorn, subsisting on the plants Hazelthorn can now grow. It's a life built on mutual understanding and acceptance, not lies and control.
And Laurie delivers the final line of acceptance, calling him by his true name, Hazelthorn. The monster has found a companion who accepts his truth completely.
What a profound and visceral journey. Evander's desperate investigation into a murder led him not to a conventional killer, but to the reality that the entire environment, the estate, the family, his own biology, was toxic and weaponized against him. This deep dive into Hazelthorn Manor truly illuminates the danger of manufactured identity.
It really does. And for you, the learner, navigating these complex narratives and all this information, we want to synthesize 3 key takeaways from Evander's monstrous evolution. First, consider the peril of manufactured identity. Evander was given a false history stock photo parents, a fake accident, a manufactured illness, all to justify his imprisonment and harvesting. The Lennox Halls didn't just lie, they engineered an emotionally palatable narrative of victimization to efficiently control a valuable resource.
So we have to question the source of our foundational truths, the narratives others assign to us.
Exactly. Second, the source material demonstrates the double-edged sword of trauma and rage. Evander's transformation into Hazelthorn shows that rage and monstrosity, specifically that internal queer and autistic rage, can become a necessary transformative survival mechanism when autonomy is systematically denied.
His transformation wasn't an act of madness. It was the ultimate logical and biological defense against annihilation.
And third, the complexity of loyalty in a toxic system, which is exemplified by Laurie. Their relationship was built on a foundation of miscommunicated trauma and this dangerous, desperate love. Laurie's initial act of creation was flawed and resulted in great pain, and his subsequent cruelty was a reflection of the abuse he endured.
But ultimately, his final actions were driven by a desperate, deep desire to protect Evander from the system he was trapped in. Sometimes the path to true loyalty is paved with complexity and initial harm.
Yeah.
Evander was made to feel monstrous for his anger and his truth. But what this narrative argues is that when your world is built on lies, sometimes embracing the parts of yourself others condemn, your anger, your difference, your feral nature, is the only way to claw your way towards self-acceptance and survival. We want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to mull over. If the Hazelthorn garden was only hungry because it was trying to complete the person Laurie wished for, what hunger are you harboring that, if fully embraced, might transform you into the monster you need to be to survive the chaos around you?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be here next time, ready to unpack your next stack of sources.